Hi everyone, it's Pete here from the Pain Toolkit. It's Friday night here in the UK. Very, very rainy UK, I've got to say. But you know what? Seeing all my new buddies here, or our old friends, I should say,
Mhm.
buddies and colleagues, it's really cheered me up. And welcome everybody to the November Pain Toolkit in Conversations. So, just before I start, I think for those who are going to be watching this on a video or listening to it on audio, be useful if we just sort of go around the room. So, ladies first. So you logged on
Oh.
first. So,
Mhm.
can I start you off? By the way, I'm digging a hairstyle.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. My name is Siri Schellinck. I'm an occupational therapist. I live in Nanaimo, BC, which is on the very, very far west coast of Canada. And I'm always happy to be here and honored to be with this group of people. And I'll pass it on to Mary.
Oh, I'm Mary Wing. I'm in Australia and I am a patient partner or whatever we make and call ourselves overseas, since we call ourselves consumers over here, which always reminds me of doing the supermarket shopping, but never mind. And I have had um, chronic neuropathic pain for many years now, and I've been working in that field all over the place for a long time.
Dave.
Yeah, I'm Dave Flusk. I'm a pain doc anesthesiologist in St. John's, Newfoundland, and always honored to be here. Thank you, Pete. Pleasure.
Mm.
And last but not last, or last not last but not least,
Hi, everyone.
I've got buddy Keith.
Keith Meldrum. I'm also from the western side of Canada, not quite as far as Sue. I'm in the southern part of the province, southern Kelowna. I'm a retired civil engineer technologist, and I'm also a person who lives with pain. And for the last 15 years, I've been doing advocacy work, everything from educational seminars to university lectures and pain research. And it's just always good to come and talk with you crazy folks about what is a crazy topic. So. Mhm.
Well, thanks, Keith, and thanks everybody for introducing yourself. Hey, listen, I come up when I was sent out the invitations. I come up with a couple of suggestions myself. But hey, listen, we start off with things. We tend to sort of move on to other stuff as this conversation goes on. But if I can just go through the three. I was also hoping Jerry was going to be with us tonight because he came up with a great suggestion. And anyway, the ones I thought we could talk about is because it rhymes, I guess, is making a difference in 2026. Well, it doesn't rhyme that much, does it? But I think it's about looking into the future, really,
Mhm.
because how can we mould things differently for the up and coming year? The second one is if not now, then when? How do we integrate pain self-management into mainstream healthcare? That's a really, for me anyway, it's still a bumpy old ride trying to get that happening. The other one was when I did post it, Jerry posted a comment. He put something on LinkedIn that actually made me think, and it's he said on LinkedIn today, is the problem that we all have getting healthcare decision makers to adopt supported self-management is because we are trying to fit it into an outdated healthcare system, and in he went on to say former giants collapsed not because they didn't adopt the tools, and he says in brackets AI, but because they adopted them in an old systems.
Right.
Mhm.
And you know what I think, we talked about this ages now that I think perhaps he's onto or something here that we're trying the reason why we all struggle with trying to get excuse me trying to get support self management into mainstream healthcare is
Mm.
because we're trying to put a square peg in around a hole, like and
Yeah.
that's the bit I think what frustrates the hell out of me anyway. But Anyway, so you've got 3 topics there, and
Mhm.
we can, I mean, who wants to sort of kick us off from there?
Who wants to go first? There's lots there to talk about. Mhm.
I'll go. I'll go. I think there's
Mary.
more than one reason. I think one of them is a time factor, obviously. A lack of knowledge themselves in mainstream healthcare, in general practice in particular. There's just this sort of, well, I think we've been talking about people working in silos forever, and I think they're still working in silos. I think that the only way to get this on board is to work with medical students and to sort of start from there. Unfortunately, that's going to take a while to get through. I worked with physiotherapy students with a lecturer where I did a lecture and then we had a Q&A for an hour. I did that for a couple of years until he's moved away. And so I didn't do it this year, but next year I've got 8 rotations booked with some medical students, and I'm hoping to be able to introduce this stuff into at least one medical school in the world. And you never know, do you? That it's going to be a few years, but if the concept is there, but then it needs someone to drive it, and I don't know how. That's what I don't know how to do, because I've as far as our peer support groups go, we have education, we have peer support, we have a whole lot. And I've left brochures with my own doctor who's extremely supportive and treats me accordingly. But those brochures are still sitting on the bookshelf when I gave them to him a year ago, 2 years ago. So, how do you sort of break that barrier?
Well done, Mary. Thank you for doing that.
Mhm.
And I think you're onto something. And I believe Keith comes to, I think in BC here, we're starting that, or we have started that. I've been teaching at our university for about 10 years now.
Yeah.
And interestingly, when I first started, I would say sort of silly, who here wants to work in chronic pain? And like, out of kindness, one person would go,
Yeah.
you
Somebody
know?
should raise their hand. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Don't think she's going to keep talking until she gets on my nerves. So,
Yeah.
but now, I mean, I'll do it again in a few months. But now I ask, and a quarter of the class are super interested. And I don't think it's
Mhm.
because of me. I think, Pain BC, we're very grateful to have them. I know Keith talks to the physio group, and I also talk to the pharmacists. And so I think that's a good way to go. I think that's helping. But and not but and another thing that I think about is something a patient client consumer said to me. That was one person, not 3. Is that she was very frustrated. She said, I keep coming to this hospital with my chronic disease, but it's an acute care hospital. And it should be, right? And this is what we
Mhm.
had. We had acute care hospital. And the other thing that I think along those lines is that the people that are running this are very medically focused. They're very emerge operating room, and that's their focus. And again, it should be, but it leaves us in the rehab components, certainly in the pain,
Yeah.
really struggling to get a foothold in there.
Mhm.
And so then I wonder, well, maybe we shouldn't be there. Like if we're talking self-management, and I bring this because and my other part of my life, I work with a lot of sports. I'm chair of a sports organization, and we always talk about sports and education and health. And so if this health part isn't working, I wonder if we can look at the local rec centers, if we can look at getting this more of a government federal thing, that the rec centers, that the schools get more in the schools, which we are. Certainly my kids have gone through school, but there's more there. But I wonder if we need to be creative and say, well, listen, this isn't working in the healthcare system. These GPs, I mean, your GP's fantastic, Mary, but they don't have time.
Mhm.
They don't. So where do we go? Like, do we go to the rec centers? Do we have a combination of creative task force or a ministry or something where it's health, education, sports, and have all these things and have some sort of unified program where they can all implement it and we can get this information out? I don't know. That's just something I think about, and that's
Yeah.
yeah, don't have any answers besides that. Just thoughts.
It's excellent, because I can still remember all the years ago that I was in primary school, we were taught the basics of health.
Hmm.
And I still remember some of that stuff to this day. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think we could go back further than medical students. And I think that they need, if kids were, it doesn't need to be a big thing. They don't need to do big assignments. It just needs to be maybe once a week, once a month even. Someone come in and talk about a health topic. Yeah.
Well, they do need to know what they're doing, because my daughter in grade 7 came to me and she says, I said, how's school? It's good, Mom, but every day we have to take a nap. I'm in grade 7. I don't need a nap. That's kindergarten. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, we're taking a nap. And I'm like, that is crazy. This teacher is off her rocker. I'm going to go talk to this teacher. I knew the principal. And I just said, well, the OT in me went, I said, well, sweetie, what does this nap look like? Well, we have to put our head on the desk and we have to breathe in and then we have to breathe out. Meditation.
And it put her to
That's
sleep.
really good.
And she had no idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think medical students are great. And I think school is another part of that. But how do we get this idea? Like, if it's a good idea, what are some other ideas? What else can we do? I don't know.
Yeah.
Dave, I'd love to hear,
Mhm.
your thoughts from within the medical system. But,
Mm.
my view, especially lately, I just had, surgery number 23 and went through the medical system. And we just took my mom through a hip replacement. She just got out of the hospital. She's had all of her joints done. Healthcare is complex. The healthcare system is complex. And I can sit here from the outside and I can tell I can hypothesize or opine on all the reasons why. Healthcare is complex. They got complex people, got aging populations,
Mhm.
all of these things. So I take a step back and I'm like, well, what is happening? And if I look over the last 40 years, we've come light years ahead from where we were 40 years ago. And I have to keep reminding myself of that. And one of the things that I'm seeing, and I still think it's going to take more time, is there's a generation or a cohort of medical students who are coming through who are reaching out for this information. Like you said, Sue, now when you talk 25% say I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
I was invited to the anesthesia rounds for St. Paul's Hospital 2 weeks ago because they wanted to talk to somebody. They said to, whoever arranges the rounds, like, we want to talk to somebody who lives with pain. We're anesthesiologists. We're getting in the pain field. We want to have somebody come and talk to us about pain.
Mhm.
And the age of these residents is like younger than my kid. So it's happening, but that's the generation that I think is starting to say, we need more, because I mean they're driving it. I look at my complex or interventional pain clinic at St. Paul's Hospital, truly interdisciplinary, truly patient focused. And one of the leading docs there is 35 years old. He's doing amazing things. So I take a deep breath. I look at the healthcare system and how it's just struggling to stay afloat right now. I mean, we've got an aging population. My mother is a baby boomer, right? Like, in the last 5 years, the amount of healthcare she's required, thank God, at no cost, has been staggering.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a huge strain on the system. And I don't mean that badly. It just means the system only has so much capacity.
Right.
That will get better in time. Unfortunately, as that population ages out, like, I've lost my father, my father-in-law. Like, I mean, it's terrible, but we're going to see that bubble burst a little bit. But from within the system, I think they're just trying to just keep fingers in dikes. I mean, what do you think, Dave? You're there, man.
Yeah, it's extremely complex. And as you're talking, I'm kind of going on these tangents in my head, right? Like, there's so many layers we can talk about. We can go down to the UGME level of medical students. Okay, so let's
Mm-hmm.
start there, right? All well and good. We start teaching them about chronic pain. We teach them about, you know, how to enter the system, in that stepped care model. Okay. And we can talk about that stepped care model at, teaching level, and we can talk about it, from a policy and service delivery model. We can teach the students all these great things. And from my experience, and I'm just talking from one institution. Okay. We have all this information, all this data to share and disseminate to our new learners and future doctors. But it's really hard to change a curriculum, right? It's really hard to go into a medical school and change things and ask for curriculum change, more time to teach things, changing exams. I've tried to do it, and it's met
Mm-hmm.
with such resistance.
Yep.
like at first I went in naive, right? Like I was part of the AFMC that developed the chronic pain program for UGME and
Mhm.
PGME, and I was full of piss and vinegar, part of the expression, and ignorance, I suppose, and went to UGME and said, okay, we got all this, great material. Let's start delivering it. And they're like, hold on, we have a curriculum. We don't
Yeah.
want this. We don't have
Yeah.
time for this. Okay, so that's one barrier, right? So trying to make those changes at that level. I was because I'm one of my hats I wear. I'm a clinical chief for the health authority here, and all health authorities in different provinces operate differently. But at the end of the day, in Canada at least, it's publicly funded, right? As Keith alluded to there, it's at nil cost. Really, it's taxpayer cost, but you
Mhm.
know, the money's coming from somewhere. And when we were in a meeting yesterday, our CEO said something that struck me. We have these great ideas and we want to make these changes. We want to implement these, this knowledge translation and program change. Okay. And in terms of chronic pain, we want to implement a step care model, which is patient focused. We want to start with education. We have patient X who has chronic pain, GP or whoever refers them. And the gatekeeper should be, okay, the patient first should go to an educational session on chronic pain, and then they should go to a peer-led self-management education session before they even enter the system. Okay.
Mm,
And this is great in theory, but the health
Mhm.
authorities don't control the purse strings. We have to convince
Mhm.
somebody
mm,
behind a desk at government to
Mm.
now fund this.
Mhm.
And that's a huge mountain to climb. Right? So I could go on and on and on, but really big barriers, right? Because there's so many people at so many different levels, right? We've got learners, we've got medical students, we've got well-intentioned practitioners, whether they're MDs, OTs, PTs, chiropractic, which is not covered, that's also out of pocket,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
not funded by
Yeah.
the healthcare system, right? So, we're going down this corridor of locked doors, is the way I see it.
Mhm.
And it really burns you out.
yeah.
Mm.
It's a good fight. That's how I got my teeth into this game. I was in a tertiary program, which is a pilot project. Started in 2008, which you may or may not remember. There's a lot more money in Canada at that time.
Yep.
And then it ended up being in two hospitals, one in Nanaimo, one in Victoria. And yeah, everyone had to come to the education first.
Mhm.
Then all of rehab was open, and then
Yeah.
they would wait for the physicians. The physician was a 2 to 3 year wait, and within a year, the
Oh,
physician's wait was down to a few months, even for the like most routine cases, because 2 out of 20 people that came to the education found enough stuff that they could actually take care of themselves, and said when they got called for
Mhm.
doctor's appointment,
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
need this anymore." So
mm,
that's a huge thing, but it's not researched, it's not studied, it's not known.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I think you're on the right track. And to your point of yeah, like I said, I've been teaching at the UBC for 10 years, maybe more, but it was only 2 years ago that they increased my time. And actually, it wasn't part of the curriculum. I was just like sort of a lecture, a guest lecture kind of thing. No exam, nothing was required. And I remember during COVID, I taught for 6 hours to 55 blank screens because everyone had their camera off.
Yeah.
It was exhausting. But
Yeah.
now it was because of the students. So, Mary, the work you're doing, that's going to pay off. And the students said, we want more of this. And so they phoned me a couple of years ago, said, how much time do you need? And
mm,
I said, 3 months.
Yeah.
And got an extra day.
I
But it's
just
like I said, David, the question is, where do we get the money from? Because we're
Yeah.
so lucky to get it in that time, but I don't know that wouldn't happen now, I don't think. You'd have to have someone pretty passionate about this subject in high places for it to happen.
I just want to speak to that because Dave, you raised earlier a point. I mean, Canadian healthcare is good, but it's got a limited funding pot as well. Where does it come from? One of the things that's happening in BC, and I'm really proud to see this happening, and I'll be a lot. I reserve judgment until I see the end of it. But our health authority here, there's each health authority, like it's the province's card, and then there's the overarching one, just the Provincial Health Services Authority. That team has taken on, and
mm,
I'm proud to
Mm.
say it, I was the squeaky wheel that brought it to him because I had this idea, how do you change curriculum? Right? Because you can have all the good idea, but no medical school in the world is going to say, right, Meldrum, you're right. Let's just throw out our curriculum and rewrite it. But trust me, I tried.
Yep.
And so the CEO of the Provincial Health Services Authority, through one of their leaders there, who I talked about this, said, we want to take this on, and what they're doing right now is a scan of all healthcare curriculum in BC at all levels, medical, allied health. They're trying to figure out what is being taught right now in healthcare in BC that relates to pain. And then they want to get that baseline and then figure out what is the right way to change that and start interjecting what's right. So I'm hopeful that there's a government lever that will be pulled in British Columbia that will say, we need to change this because that's where the funding will come from.
Yeah.
Can I just think Mark's just joined us a few moments ago.
Hi, Mark.
Introduce Mark. I've been following Mark for a couple of years now, and I mean he's doing fantastic work promoting the stuff we've been talking about. Mark, do you just want to quickly introduce yourself and what we're talking about tonight is it's one thing keeps coming back that we keep coming back to is how do we get more the decision makers get the juices going, etc. about where they can introduce self-management, etc. Now, you know, from watching your work, I mean, I think, you know, you're coming at it from perhaps a different angle where you with the amount of I don't know how you find time, to be honest with you, dude. How, you know, with the videos you're recording, etc., interviewing, and you know, to me, you're a massive influencer on social media for supportive self-management. But Kate, sorry, Mark, but do you just want to quickly introduce yourself, and then the others all know who you are then if they don't know you now.
Thanks for having me. First off, Mark Kargela, I'm a physical therapist about 22 years. I'm stationed or home based here in Phoenix, Arizona at the moment. Grew up in Michigan, been here for about 10 years, but my history's been really, I thought I was going to figure out pain through a ridiculous amount of manual therapy training and thinking it was just a matter of my hands getting more skilled to manage the complexity that I was seeing with patients who are having some complex pain situations. And that almost led me to quit probably twice. There was 2 serious times I was looking to quit, but thankfully I didn't. So when I actually got in tune with like fellowship training, which was okay, but it was manual therapy. So I was kind of caught, but they did have a why manual therapy works, which kind of showed it's much more of a top-down, effort. And then also a pain science course that was taught by, why manual therapy works was taught by Joel Bialowski and Steve George, who are 2 pretty preeminent voices in mechanistic research. And then I had a ability to work with Adrian Lowe's group for a little bit, and that was a aha moment of why I'm not going to fix people's pain with their hands. But regardless, now I'm in a university. I'm a clinical assistant professor for the last almost going to go on 9 years here, where I work in. It's it's an osteopathic university, so it's osteopathic physicians here in the States, which ends up being pretty close to DO or MDs here, but they have a lot of the DO philosophy, osteopathic philosophy, which can be a challenge because a lot of complex pain gets related to alignment issues in the spine or the pelvis or the SI joint. So working, to try to help, we're in the process of trying to launch a pain program here at the university. Modern pain care is my kind of side business, but it's more of a media thing to try to get my approach to this, because I share the frustration here and all of you talk about it, leading as I was listening in. I struggle I just almost think like we now have a unique opportunity with social media and the ability, we don't have to pay for public health initiatives to get advertising out there. Like you can put a video on YouTube that can get 1 million views tomorrow. If it's now, obviously that's challenging with it's not as easy as that sounds, but.
Well, not all of us can, but some of us.
Some of us can who want to do the video thing. Yeah, I realize that. But I think right now, to me, I think that's the inroad to get to where there's such inertia not to change in healthcare, especially here in the States where it is monetarily discouraged to change with a lot of what happens as far as how pain's managed. So to me, I think storytelling and letting the public see what is the problem by telling stories of Keith and Pete and other folks that I try to interview lived experiencers as much as I can, just because I think that's the message I think, our profession needs to hear, because we're still stuck on let's find a new way to dry needle somebody or manipulate somebody the 15th different way that we've been doing for decades now, and still kind of missing the boat a lot of times. But it's changing, but at a glacial pace in some aspects. But there is, I don't want to hog the mic here, but the one thing I've noticed, I've just recently started delving into TikTok, which I am not a huge fan of social media. It is simply a vehicle to the message. From a we all know the polarizing, not so fun nature of it, but I shared Joletta's, I did a podcast with her, and just the angst that is out there from a chronic pain population is, and I think if it's most palpable, it is most palpable on TikTok. And so I'm going to try to aim some efforts over there to see if we can start, you know, redirecting that anger so they can start pushing upwards into their legislatures and start having conversations with people who can make change with it, because there's a lot of angry, disenfranchised, frankly pissed off people on TikTok. And some stuff coming at me, which I know is just directed. There's a lot of anger over opioids and all that. The whole issue's been managed, and there's a lot of anger over a lot of things. But that's where and maybe I'm just disenfranchised with authority and government and stuff, just because I haven't, especially here in the States, we all know what that looks like. But I just don't have a huge amount of trust or faith at the moment. Maybe I need to not be such a curmudgeon-y, cynical individual, but I'm trying to go at it from a little bit of a groundswell, like, from the grassroots type of level, I guess, with more of a media approach to see if we can stimulate some change. Maybe the right person watches a video and it gets in front of some different people. Who knows? But I guess that's where I'm at.
Yeah, us, well, I think people living with pain, we get just so frustrated with the system. We just get bounced around, etc. And I think a few years ago, Keith, didn't we? We were sort of we having these sort of meetings and whatnot, and we were sort of not I suppose moaning, but was what when these big organisations have conferences and stuff like that, how few people with living experience of pain that get invited. I think we met you. I think the IS Congress in Boston in 2018. I think that was probably a big shift going on, but it's sort of everything's died off a little bit again. But 4 or 5 years ago, myself and Keith, we were sort of chatting. I think it was one Sunday afternoon. Well, for me, it's Sunday afternoon, but you know, where uh, why don't we just do our own thing, like, because we were sort of, why don't we, people with long term pain, why aren't we invited? We're so much at these conferences, and that's why we weaved in we started doing these big conversations, conferences, really. We got when's the date of it, Keith? The next one, is it 21st of 21st?
February.
Yeah, 21st of Feb.
Yeah.
I think it's
Well, yeah.
yeah,
20th in this part of the world, 21st for you.
20th, yeah, 20th and 21st in
Yeah.
Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah.
But what we're doing, we're trying to, like everybody else is doing here, we're sort of trying to role model to these institutions, the decision makers, to actually get us more involved, etc. So what we role model is on these conferences is we have um, three healthcare professionals and three people living with persistent pain. And I think, Dave, you're on the you're going to be involved, aren't you, Dave? You're doing a bit of the next one.
Yep, he's there.
Yeah, he's there. He's on mute at the moment. You still with us, Dave?
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
Dog's barking, so I'm muted. 1 second.
Yeah.
yeah, we're looking forward to your thing. But I think for us, and that's how I get. Sometimes I just get so bloody frustrated with it all. I think, I'll just just go and do it, because I don't think the decision makers aren't, they're not readily there yet. I think they move around the system and stuff like healthcare system. So we're all constantly changing. I know when I worked in the NHS, everybody moves around. It's like, when the record stops, then everybody sits down, sort of thing. It's like, but then the music starts again, off they go around and moving around. The amount of shifting around is unreal. So it's trying to pin someone down, but someone that really wants to make a difference. And going back to Jerry's thing is that we're trying to fit a round peg in a square hole, like um, and it's just and the whole is that is not of our making. Like it's been a making from decades old now. Like but I think we need to promote like the success stories of people where they've got stuck now, they're unstuck and they're getting on with their lives, etc. Things like that. Anyway, I'll leave it. We've got this conference in February, and we're really looking forward to that one. And so I tell you what, just before I shut up, since been over there any interesting experience this week. I'm part of the British Pain Society, and we're just about to within the society we have these things called special interest groups, and I know other pain societies have them as well. But we're starting up in the development stage, starting up one for people with pain, or cancer pain. And I looked around other pain societies. One of my little jobs was to look around. Well, can we network with other SIG groups like that are doing cancer pain? And I couldn't find any. So and I think that sort of goes on. Is there any SIG groups, special interest groups for self-management really? Like, I think there's within the British Pain Society, they've got like a separate group for patients, etc., which they're moving on with. But I think I think within societies, the pain societies around the world, they need to involve or have a special interest group for supportive self-management. I didn't see. I mean, I did. I contacted all of them. The Canadian one, Australia, New Zealand, etc. And the it seems very sparse. Wasn't readily available. I think they only had a couple of special interest groups. So that may be a route, where we get our pain societies in our respective countries to develop a SIG group specifically for pain supportive self-management. Sorry, Keith, you had your hand up there.
Yeah, I just a couple of thoughts. So first, going back, so progress is being made. So Pain Canada, so Canada's national sort of umbrella organization, which was really brought in to shepherd the action plan for pain in Canada, has a supported self-management subcommittee, just newly founded, but it is trying to basically figure out what's going on in Canada with supported self-management, because it's happening in little bits and pieces across the country, and then sort of bring that together so that gaps are filled, people don't reinvent wheels, and then come up with, I don't want to say a national strategy, but maybe a coordinated way to introduce this, into Canada. So I have a lot of hope for that. And just, listening to you, Mark, I really feel your angst and your frustration. And thank you for not giving up, first of all, because the work that you're doing is really important. And I have to remind myself, because I get at times like this, why am I doing this? What am I doing? I could be doing better things with my life. But I wasn't put on this earth to change everything. That's not my job. And I can't change this. But I and Mark and Sue and Mary and Dave and Pete and Belton and all of these other people, we can do our little part. And it's going to have to be a grassroots change. It's going to have to come up from the bottom. And that square peg that you talk about, Pete, it will slowly, like water dripping on a rock, will start to erode into a circle. And that peg will fall slowly. It's not going to drop overnight, but over time, it's going to keep slipping down because it's going to take time. And I just have to accept the fact that it's going to take time. And so I can either get off the bus and quit, or I can stay on the bus with all of you and do my little part to bring change. And everybody here and people who would join us who couldn't make it today, plus thousands across the world, they're all effective change agents in this. We just do it small bits at a time.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Mary. Mary, do you want to comment?
It's okay. I was going to say, excuse me, if you can break through to the Australian Pain Society, that would be amazing, because for them, to put it mildly, patients don't exist. You're not allowed to be a member of that society, let alone attend a conference. And even if they said you could, you wouldn't be able to afford to. But I have noticed that the Canadian Pain Society and the British Pain Society operate totally differently. They've even got patients' committees, which I think is awesome. But over here, it's frustrating me more at the moment, and it came to mind more when you mentioned it, because their next National Congress is right in my hometown. So there'd be no travel expenses, no nothing, and it wouldn't really cost them anything to give me a ticket to go. But of course, they wouldn't do that. So, I would just scream to go. I did go to one for 2 days once when I was given someone else's ticket. That person shall remain nameless to protect the guilty. And it was wonderful. But people don't realise that we people also need to keep up with current things. We need to learn. We need to know what's going on. So we need to attend conferences and listen to what we can and learn. So, it was awesome. I spent 2 days there and nobody queried it. I knew that many people that were there. It wasn't funny. I even went into the, heaven forbid, the exhibition hall. I even saw some big pharma there, and I didn't talk to them. And that's the issue. No, that's the issue. They're frightened that the big pharma will talk to the patients or vice versa. Trust me, if they know that you're a non-prescriber and you're a patient, they won't talk to you. So I went in there to help out with the stand that Pain Australia had in there. I said, well, if you're going to give me a ticket, then I'm going to go and help, because it's not really fair for me just to, to take the ticket. So I had a really great time. That was the last time it was here in my hometown. So that was a few years ago. So, yeah, that's what brought it to mind. The minute you said you had contacted all these people, I thought, yeah, it's here next year, So.
Yeah.
So, Mary, there hasn't been any movement or advocacy towards the Australian Pain Society to have a patient partner committee? Like, has it
No,
been broached and rejected, or what's the status there?
Yeah.
nothing. That they won't allow patients even to be members, let alone to have a committee. It's just not there. And if
It
you
seems very
ask
archaic
why,
in this day and age.
it is
Yeah.
archaic, and they still go back to the exhibition hall and the big pharma excuse, that you apparently there's some law, and I know the IASP, didn't they, Keith, overcome that somehow by not letting us GAPA members, and then we didn't have a congress because COVID came. We were not to go into the exhibition hall or something like that, but we were allowed to go to the congress. There was something.
Yeah.
It's an easy thing to overcome. It's not the be all to end all.
Yeah, that's what IS did in Canada, and with CPS they struggle with that as well, because there was this, like, it's a law when in fact it isn't in Canada. It was just kind of this is just the way it's always been done. So
Yeah.
once that legal hurdle was removed, then it was just like, oh well, then it just made people feel it made people feel uncomfortable is what it did. So yeah, not people living with pain. It made everybody on the other side of the fence feel really uncomfortable is what it was. So
Right.
And sorry, by that, do you mean like Big Pharma or the organizers, or who's on the other side of the fence? Sorry.
So the organizers, not Big Pharma, or even the medical device companies, because they'll talk to anybody, right? But it was more from the organizers, because they're like, well, there's going to be a liability issue. There's going to be something to, like, just insert any hyperbolic overthinking statement. That's what they had. And then when they opened it up at CPS, it was a monumental nothing. People who have lived with pain went into the exhibit hall and just went, it's really interesting to talk to people. And that way nobody died. Nobody got sued.
Right.
Do you know they know they're not meant to, and it goes both ways. So you stay away from each other. It's easy.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be great with Big Pharma? And I said I've recently had some surgeries and I'm on some medications, and there's so many pages they give you. It'd be great if they gave you like a page of self-management, like, hey, if you feel like this, maybe you should do some breathing, until your next round of meds, or here's a meditation website that you can go to. Like, that'd be amazing. Because pharmacy is a great place to actually adhere that. And my daughter's actually she's at university and doing a AI course, and hers is combining some sort of AI that can for medication pack that can say, hey, if you're not, you sort of hit it and try and get the next batch. So, okay, you got 30 minutes to wait. Here's a meditation. Here's some breathing. Like, this is something she's creating. I'm like, yeah, that's great. And pharmacists, they see people in pain maybe more than anybody, right?
Mhm.
They're not
Yeah.
big pharma, but
Yeah.
I think that's a resource that we need to like bring in a bit more.
Dave,
Into
I think
self-management. They're like, sorry, bring pharma into the self-management realm, and
right.
them that could be a piece.
I was thinking of what you said earlier, Dave, about, the challenge in Canada and probably North America worldwide is the funding for, like, these are great ideas.
Hmm.
And then the health authorities, at least in Canada, like, yeah, but we don't control all the purse strings. So like you said, the way it should work is people should have to go through pain education and then go through a peer support, all of this. And as you said, Sue, they found that people who went through that were like, hey, I'm good. Like, you know what? I don't need an intervention. I don't need something else. I've got this, and I can exit the healthcare system,
Yeah.
mainstream healthcare, and go off to the side into this self-management problem. I mean, but I go back to my earlier statement. I'm not here to defend healthcare, but I came out of private industry. People who say, well, you got to run private government, private industry, can't happen. It just can't. The two are worlds apart.
Yeah.
But you can take private industry applications and bring them to healthcare. And some of that is a little bit of forward-thinking investing. If we invest some of this money today,
Yeah.
the return on that investment isn't going to happen overnight. Not like if we properly fund an emergency room, we save lives that day.
Right.
If we properly fund self-management, supported self-management, we affect lives down the road.
Down the road. Right.
It's waiting for that return on the investment that governments and healthcare has become paralyzed in, because they're like, we've only got this much money, and if I give it to you now, I need to see that impact by 4 o'clock today, or I'm up shit creek.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Give me
the idea,
right?
yeah. Like those people that plant the tree aren't necessarily going to see it at full height, right? And especially
Exactly.
they're not going to want to plant a tree that's going to help their, the next person in line necessarily.
4-year election cycles.
Yeah.
That's the longest possible ROI available to a politician. Is this going to show me a return and make me look good when it comes time for an election? So you got to hit it out of the park in 4 years. With supported self-management, you're not going to change it overnight, but within a 4-year cycle, you can probably start to show the efficacy of it and the changes that can be made. But prying it out of the accountant's hands to say, give me $1 today and I will return it to you 4.35 or 4.7 or whatever that metric is.
Yeah.
Within a few years, you will love me. And they go, ooh, a few years. No, can't do it. So you can't run government like private industry. You just can't. I spent half of my career in government and half in private industry. They're two different beasts, but you can bring elements of each in there. And investing in the future is something that it just continues to struggle with. So people like Mark and the work that he does, I think, is critically important, because it starts to show why investing in today changes people's lives tomorrow, which then means reducing the impact on healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah. And the power of the people, the program that got started in the 911 Victoria got started because the doctor was so frustrated. He saw every person in his roster one more time, gave them the numbers of who to call, a template of this is what, whatever you want to say, but here are some thoughts. And they all wrote into the MPs, the MLAs, and they got it going. He knew that his voice wasn't enough. So, but that's time and energy and not sure of the outcome.
Yeah.
Here in the I've just been looking it up again. I couldn't quite remember I knew the acronym, but I couldn't remember it. You mentioned pharmacists and stuff like that, but also GPs. Years I know when I joined the NHS, a few years ago now, I come across something called a Croft mark, and it's quality and outcomes framework. And what they did, because to try and avoid people getting with GPs and say, well, and pharmacists, well, we haven't got the time. Who's going to pay us to do it, So they come up with this thing, I think the Croft mark, and so so say for example, I go to see the GP, they'll oh, while you're here, we'll do your blood pressure. And the reason for that is because if they're checking my blood pressure, if they get any red flags, they can do something about it there and then. If they don't do that, then the likelihood of me perhaps having a stroke or something like that, that will cost the health service, you know, uh, thousands of dollars, you know, or pounds and whatnot. So, but they get paid extra for taking my blood pressure. So, John, I'm thinking, well, in pounds, I don't know what the tariff is now. They get paid, but it's might be probably in your money's about I don't know, $50, something like that, $60. But I also they do it with smoking cessation. So to get people to quit smoking, they use the cloth mark. So they pay the people ideally to do that was pharmacists because they put these little rooms in there and they put them in there, but they get paid to do that. Now, why can't they do that with self-management? As you say, someone said a minute ago, you know, when someone gets a pain, etc., the first port of call the pharmacist because they're given some sort of cream, lotion, or whatnot, like, you know. And if that don't work out, then they start using the GP and stuff like that. So to me, it's perhaps we need to get insensitized. Is that the right word?
Incentivized.
Yeah, incentivized. Yeah, so let's pay them. Well, okay, well, you know, someone said, well, they haven't got time, but if they're going to get a few bucks out of it, they will make time, you know. So, but the thing is, if they get self-management in earlier, you know, it's just, you know, one of my little things I use is paying self-management your first choice or last result. You know, if we get the more we get in earlier, like you know, like taking blood pressure and stuff like that, then people don't go on to become long-term problems, like you know. So perhaps it's you know it's that you said it, Keith. You know, uh, getting the money, using the money wisely, and getting in earlier, so that because it's not sustainable because you know since when I first started up there in the UK, there was only 7.9 million people with pain. Then it jumped up to 14 million, and it's still quoting 28 million now. Thinking, well, I don't know, is that still? And that's donkey's years. That's 10-year-old information, but even the British Pain Society is still quoting 28 million. So we're working you're working to in a system where it's going to be unsustainable, like you know. So it's how do we? It's getting to that. I mean, we tried that, you know. We get our foot in the door with the World Health Organization a year or two back. But I sadly that didn't come to anything, like you know, because there again, see, I think those at the dudes at the top, they didn't really get it, like you know. So, but I think you know, I think we've got to keep our information simple, doable. And I think we've got to come up with the solutions because I don't think them dudes at the top really know what to do. And it's like in a way, we have to come up with simple uh, solutions on how they can roll it out, like, you know, so their brain don't hurt, you know.
I'm just sitting here thinking, so Canada and the UK and I believe Australia are single payer systems, so taxpayer funded systems.
Yeah.
And we're, you know, we see the struggles here.
Australia isn't?
You're not single payer, Mary?
We have two systems here. We have one that is taxpayer funded, and then we have a private system as well. It's very complicated.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll check that statement. So half of the Australia and the UK have a publicly funded system, which after talking to some friends and what they have to pay in the US now for their annual health premiums, what I pay in taxes is a drop in the bucket to that. All that to say, you know, here we're struggling with this. Mark, how do you incentivize anybody in the US healthcare system to do this when it's a for-profit system? I mean, I feel your pain, buddy. Like, how do you break that nut?
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's hard to convince a person of change when their paycheck depends on them not making that change. So yeah, I don't, that's why I've kind of, in the US especially, I just don't foresee trying to go uphill against that. I think to me it has to be the people, that the voices get loud enough, and enough voices get loud enough to where it starts affecting, I mean, to me, it's like, let's have events with real people. And then here's the number of your congressman. Make sure you call and complain about the way this is. Like you almost form a political action movement from, just as part of your events, right? Because I mean, these events and telling stories about you and Pete and Joletta and all the people who've gone through it, Mary, sounds like you as well. Those stories should piss people off. I mean, and they should get angst going. And I'm not saying we need to like have the next revolution by any means, but somewhat in an extent. I just don't. I just
No, we need
the U.S. is so that
Mm.
with for-profit capitalistic views on healthcare. I just don't. There's such massive weight and disincentives to change that it's hard to, at least, and maybe it's different. And I know in BC, you guys are probably one of the shining spots as far as what I hear goes on in BC. It's just not what.
And it's still terrible. Not enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's great, but
yeah.
I don't know. I think, the politicians, that's a mess. Nothing changes unless money gets threatened in the US.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I think if people's elections get threatened, that might change some things. But
Right.
I don't know.
And
That's why literally I think like YouTube and TikTok, to where that's the way you generate a movement of people. It isn't going to be through, I mean, I'm not saying that working through these societies can't be helpful to see if we can find a champion who might exist in there that could possibly, but that's like a diamond in the rough from my experience. A lot of those folks are, again, pretty set on keeping things the status quo. So I think, getting messages where the people can rally around it and, move around it. Because I mean, I see you all, you're rallying around such. I just think we need to, and if we just try to wait, well, why aren't you letting us talk about it? American Pain Societies especially are not inclusive, barely of like anybody who's not like very interventionally based or pharmaceutical based, like. And then that's just been my view from some of the talk I've had with others. So it may have changed recently, but I've just kind of, not been too enthused on that end.
Yeah, no kidding. And to be fair to politicians, which I don't think anyone in the world's ever said, how I don't know, maybe it has. But how do they know unless they hear from people? I worked with someone whose very close relative works in the members is a member of parliament in Canada. Had no idea about chronic pain and did lots of work with him pro bono on me, lots of education, because he was someone who's in the position to make change and he just had no idea. And so I think we need to, we certainly being clinicians, but again, people with pain have such a better voice to talk about how it impacts their lives, physically, of course, mentally, emotionally, but financially. Yeah, that's a tough one. I was thinking sort of back to my point again about combining health and education and sports or health, ministries. It'd be really interesting. And I'm doing a master's right now, so I will kind of maybe look into this a little bit. But if we could break down what is self-management, like what exactly is it? What's the bare minimum that would help sort of the most number of people? But what if we split that? Like why should one ministry have to pay for all of it for all of the country? Like what if education took on a chunk of it? And I realized we're looking at federal and provincial differences of who manages what and the money and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, certainly with health can take on some of it, but why can't the sports? Why can't, because definitely they're already doing that. I learned meditation as a 9-year-old gymnast. I had no idea that it was called autogenic relaxation until I was 38. So I mean, these are tools, like as we talked before, as Mary was talking about, that we can get to the people, but maybe if we define what is it, clinically evidence-based, et cetera, and then try and split it up financially so there isn't someone who has to bear that whole load. But again, that's a lot of work and a lot of coordination that I don't know who would take that on.
I think you mentioned it earlier, Sue, and it's still a favourite of mine. I remember going to an NHS event years ago up in Norfolk, and the one of the presenters there she was talking to the audience about how she said, how did the recycling revolution start?
Mm,
And she said it started with the kids, so the kids in the school.
yeah.
They were taught about recycling, the importance about it. But then this is the bit that really intrigued me, is they actually then went home and educated the parents and their
Mm,
peers. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, and I said, why aren't we doing that in healthcare, where we're using, we can, if we integrate, you include it, support self-management within the curriculums at schools, that could be a way of not the solution, but where the kids learn lifelong skills. So when the chances of the kids in school now are going to go on to have some sort of long-term condition or something, diabetes or whatnot. But so we tip, but also include just basic self-management, etc.
mm-hmm.
But more importantly, but they go home and they teach the parents and others in the family, So
Yep.
I like that. I still like that idea because it's a low cost way of doing it. So we're coming at it from little different angles, but that's a really low cost way of doing stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. And way better than your kid coming home and you have to teach them math that you don't understand.
Yeah.
Hey, easy. Math is good. Math is important. Math is
Actually, I
fun.
love math, but yeah, they do change it. I don't know why. I don't know how it gets changed.
Hey,
No, that's a
listen,
great idea. Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to say one thing because Keith, you said, you don't see the ROI until years down the road, and
Yeah.
not to contradict what you're saying, Keith. Don't get me wrong, but I do see, a return on that investment in the early days. Okay, just as a provider, right? So
100, right. Yeah.
we get people into supported self-management as part of that stepped care model,
Yeah.
and they're not going to the emerge when they have a pain flare-up, waiting 16 hours for a shot of Toradol,
Yeah.
which is worth a row of beans. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They're not
Mm-hmm.
calling my office asking to speak to me, and then they get an appointment for 3 days from now. I call them because they wanted a virtual because they're in too much pain to drive for face to face. And when I call them, oh, I'm okay now. I just had a bad 2 days, but everything's all good. And that appointment time has been
Yeah.
taken up. And just for calling, I bill the government $42. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, not to get into dollars and cents and everything, but it would increase capacity for other things, right? In the acute stages, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the government here, and I'm not afraid to say it, this is recorded and goes out, I don't care. They have cracked down on providers who see, if I'm seeing Keith Meldrum this week and again next week and again the week after and again the week after because he's got a chronic disease and he needs some support, they're then auditing the doctor to say, hold on a second, are we going to pay you for seeing this guy so often? And they're not, and they're withholding the pay to the physician. They're doing that.
Yeah.
They're doing that
Oh
here
my
right
God.
now.
Hey,
Okay, so we're supposed to
Whoa.
work for free.
crazy.
Okay, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. But
Ooh.
if
Yeah.
we had a mechanism to integrate that supported self-management so that Keith
Yeah.
didn't have to come see Dave every week because now he's got the tools to deal
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
that flare up, then there's 3 appointments that no longer have to be booked.
Yeah.
Right. So I do
Yeah.
see an initial return on investment there. And I think it's really important that, when we develop programs, that we really do integrate this from the ground up so that, you don't get to go to that multidisciplinary, interventional pain clinic. And maybe you never will because, by the time you reach step,
Mm-hmm.
you realize we don't need that. You don't need to go down
Yeah.
there and
Yeah.
clog up the referral system.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
just something that came to mind while you were
And
speaking.
it's an extremely important point because in the trenches, for lack of a better term, you are seeing that return immediately. I'll amend my statement to that ROI isn't seen systemically, and I mean sort of at the top levels of
Right.
and that's and it probably wasn't what I was thinking at the time, but with this conversation we just had now, that's where they don't see. I mean,
Yeah.
if we could take the results that you see every day and maybe this is what we have to do, and compile that, because I love math, compile that into numbers and stats and show that 3 appointments were not needed and all, and show the money so that it gets up to
Right.
the bean counters and the bureaucrats and the politicians who are counting down to the next election.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe that ROI window would be shrunk because you just said it. You're seeing it literally the next day. It's just not getting up to those folks.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
not.
how do we take the successes that you have and show it's happening right now?
How do we
Right.
quantify it is my thought. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and you talked about metrics earlier, and they want to see, what service is being delivered. Because at the end of the day, whether the healthcare is run like it is in BC or it's run like it is in Newfoundland, it's service delivery. It's patient care at
Yeah.
the end of the day that they want to see, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
We look at wait lists. I'm always getting emails from managers and directors. What's the wait list like right now? It hasn't changed in 3 years. It's still this, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't implement things like this, right?
Mhm.
People die on
Right.
wait lists.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's so many layers to this.
I think, sorry, and I don't know what I'm going to do with this other than just sit here and spin. But Dave, what you just said, that to me sounds so critically important. That's what's missing is those returns that the healthcare providers are seeing every day, literally, like you say, the next day. Like you're seeing it.
Yeah,
That's getting lost in the white noise of bureaucracy.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Well,
Mm.
I'm shocked to hear that, Dave. It's like I'm just thinking, I'm sitting thinking that's the equivalent of asking someone to learn how to drive in one session.
Mm.
Listen, I can tell you, I know we got to go where time's up. I know a physician here in this province who got badgered so much by government because he had his population of patients, it was a chronic disease population, and he was a very caring individual, and he was really supporting his patients and making sure he followed up and, really checking in on his patients. And they badgered him to the point where he burnt out and he had to leave because he's like, I'm trying to do the best for my patients, and you guys are just all you're doing is critiquing me, right? You don't have a solution for the system. I'm the
Yeah.
solution for these patients now.
Yeah.
You don't have another
Yeah.
solution, and you're gonna, let me dare say, harass me. I'm out.
Yeah.
So they'll nickel and dime. They'll say, geez, Dave, you're taking too much time with Meldrum here. So at 40 or $50 a pop or whatever the hell it
Yep.
is. So we're gonna just sort of basically shut that down. And then Meldrum's going to get dumped into the acute care system and go
Yep.
into the ER and rack up thousands of dollars of
Yep.
acute care.
And time.
Yeah.
I'm a math guy. Somebody make the math on that one work because it
Yeah.
doesn't. I'm like,
Yeah.
Do you
oh
know,
man.
I always
I've got
say
a
that once you
theory
become a
that,
bureaucrat in the healthcare
sorry,
system, 2 + 2 = 5. That's
Yeah.
I've got a theory, and I've been bleating on about this forever. Of course, nothing will ever happen. If you're going to be a politician and you're going to be in charge of health or whatever else it might be, you need to have experience in that field because they don't have a clue. We spent 2.5 years developing an optimal system of care for low back pain, which would have driven people away from the ED and been very cost effective and stopped all those ambulances out the front because low back pain is the prime reason people go to an ED. And I happened to be with our health minister about a totally different topic, and I took it with me because the minute he mentioned ambulance ramping, I was going to pass it across the desk and say, just have a read of this in your spare time because this
Right.
will definitely help with it. And I did get that chance and I did do it. And I didn't even have the courtesy of an email to say, thank you for your document. I have read it. Nothing, absolutely nothing. But he's a lawyer. What would he know? If he had a background in health, he might think. As a matter of fact, we did have a health minister in New South Wales a few years ago who had chronic pain, and they were given 28 million over 4 years to put into whatever they wanted to put it into, research programs, this, that, all the rest of it. So it makes a difference.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
Okay.
don't know how you can't do that. You can't change the political makeup of the whole world, can you?
Keep trying.
Yeah.
Good
Well,
for you, Mary.
thanks everybody for all the input today. It's nice to see everyone again. Nice to see Keith again and Dave, etc. I'm digging it. I love these. Always come away with me a lot of more wind in my sails, etc. Like, but I know Keith messaged you earlier on about doing the next one in February. I'm thinking, is anybody up for doing one in January as well, or would like the next one to be in February?
Late January.
Yeah, is February going to be busy
Late-ish.
for you guys with the self-management?
Well,
Sorry.
that's got the big conference week. Is it that third week? So yeah, we could do one of these in January. I mean, if that works for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll sort out a
Yeah.
date. I won't do it too near.
I'll be away early January,
Oh,
but I'll be
here we
here
go. Here we
from
go.
halfway on.
Yeah, somewhere
Oh, I
hot.
won't be very far away, just down the road at the beach.
Oh, that's tough.
Pete, I gotta go pick up my daughter.
Okay.
All right.
Have a
I'll,
great time in Greece.
I'll
Thank
organise
Yeah.
it. Take care, mate.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Bye,
Bye.
guys. Nice to see you.
Bye.
Stop
Bye,
the
everyone.
recording.
Bye. Thank you.